Microbrands were supposed to be the antidote, the cure for bloated Swiss pricing, the rebellion against beige committee-designed watches, small teams, honest value, a bit of weirdness and a bit of passion. But here's the question. Did microbrands save watches, or did they just give marketing a smaller logo? Because for a while it really was glorious. A microbrand felt like discovering a band before they were famous. You weren't buying a product, you were buying a story that hadn't been focus grouped into existence. You were buying the thrill of something new. But then the space got crowded. Attention got expensive and algorithms got hungry. And suddenly the microbrand world started behaving like everything else on the internet. Not designed for joy, but designed for a conversion. It didn't become problematic overnight. It became optimized. And optimization, as we all know, is where the heart and soul goes to die politely. The word for this is enshittification. It was coined by a writer and tech critic, Cory Doctorow, to describe what happens to platforms over time. First, they're good to users. Then they're good to businesses. Then they're good to shareholders. And eventually, they're bad for everyone. Because once growth becomes the only metric that matters, the product stops being a product. It becomes a machine for extraction. You've seen it everywhere. Uber, for example, arrived like a miracle. Clean rides, honest pricing, frictionless convenience. And then, slowly, the venture capital mathematics kicked in. The app stayed, the experience stayed, but the original promise began to rot, like an apple left out in the sun too long. The rides got pricier, the drivers got squeezed, the revolution became surge pricing wearing nicer shoes. Or take Amazon. It started as a wonder. Everything you could want, delivered like magic. Now, it's a marketplace where you need a compass, a lie detector, and 3 days of emotional resilience just to buy a phone charger. The platform didn't collapse. It just became noisier and more crowded, more expensive in all the invisible ways. And then there's social media. Facebook, Instagram, the lot of them. They began as places to connect. Now they're billboards with faces. Not designed for joy, but designed for engagement, which, at the end of the day, is just anxiety with analytics. That's enshittification. The product doesn't suddenly become terrible. It becomes slightly worse, forever. And microbrands, quietly, are not immune. In the beginning, microbrands competed on value, specs, finishing, originality, and honesty. Now, a significant chunk of the space competes on something else entirely. Urgency, hype, narrative, and the theatre of scarcity. Not every microbrand, not even the most, but enough that you can see and feel the atmosphere changing. You've seen it. Countdown timers, only 100 pieces and constant limited drops. Language that sounds less like watchmaking and more like a nightclub promoter trying to fill a room on a Tuesday night. And here I want to ask you, genuinely, have you ever felt this shift too? Because once you notice it, you can't unsee it. And the problem is simple. When marketing becomes the product, the watch becomes a prop. And the customer becomes the fuel. Let me admit something. I haven't actually bought a microbrand watch yet, but I've hovered. Oh, have I hovered? Studio Underdog is the perfect example. Charming concept, beautiful designs. That watermelon dial that grabs your brain by the lapels and says, come on, just one more treat. And I get it. Watches are emotional. A dial can hit you like a song. A silly watch can be exactly what you need in an industry drowning in seriousness. But then I think about the Seagull 1963, the Red Star that I've got. A watch that cost me around £85. And yes, the jury's out as to whether it's real or not. The Seagull factories are a bit of a grey area. And inside it is the same glorious ST1901 hand-wound chronograph movement as the Studio Underdog. The same vintage heart beating away behind the dial. And that's where the spell breaks, because once you've held that reality in your hands, it becomes hard to justify paying up to $1,000 for essentially the same engine, just dressed in a prettier outfit and a better photo shoot. And the whole assembled in Great Britain stamp, it doesn't help. Maybe it is bolted together and boxed up in the UK. Maybe the quality control is tighter. Maybe the brand is lovely. All of that can be true, but it still leaves a question hanging in the air like smoke. Am I paying for the watch, or am I paying for the story of the watch? Because assembled in is not heritage. It's geography with a marketing halo. And that doesn't make Studio Underdog bad. It just makes the economics visible. So let's name the pattern. If microbrands are drifting into enshittification, it usually happens through 4 familiar doors. And here I'd love to know if you've seen these too. Let me know in the comments if you've noticed any of these examples. There's a certain type of microbrand release that feels less like a product launch and more like a hostage situation. You're not invited to consider, you're invited to panic. Limited runs, countdown timer with never returning or last chance to buy. Let's face it, nothing says artisanal craftsmanship like being emotionally mugged by a countdown. And the message is always the same. Your job is not to make a good decision. Your job is to act before your brain arrives. Be honest. Have you ever bought a watch because the timer bullied you? Because urgency is profitable. Reflection isn't. This is where enshittification starts feeling personal. A brand emerges. Cinematic origin story, immaculate photography, and a logo that looks like it took 6 months and 3 designers. It speaks fluent heritage, as if it was founded during the Battle of Britain. And then you look closer. The case is catalogue. The hands are catalogue. The bracelet is catalogue. The movement is a workhorse you can buy in watches that cost a fraction of the price. What you're really paying for is the performance of luxury. The watch is just a delivery mechanism. It's not that these parts are bad. It's that the markup is performing a magic trick and hoping you won't notice the rabbit is from Temu. So you tell me, at what point does design language become AliExpress with a font? Crowdfunding isn't inherently bad. Some great things have come from it, but it creates ideal conditions for wishful thinking being sold as certainty. A render looks perfect. A spec sheet is generous, and the story is inspiring. Then months pass, sometimes a year. Shipping dates move like mirages on a hot road. And when the watch finally arrives, the emotional energy that was meant to be joy has hardened into something else, relief. And relief is not the same thing as satisfaction. Boutique brands like this with limited resources can get crushed by its own success. Quality control becomes inconsistent. After sales become overwhelmed. The community then turns from enthusiastic to tense, and a product that started as hope ends as friction. This is the softest problem, and also one of the most powerful. A watch doesn't become desirable because it's objectively brilliant. It becomes desirable because enough people agree it's desirable. Consensus is sparked by a few photos, a few videos, a few glowing phrases, repeated until they sound like truth. And let's be fair, many reviewers are doing honest work. But the incentive structure is obvious. If access depends on relationships, criticism becomes vague. Sharp edges get sanded off. The tone becomes agreeable. And being agreeable is the perfect lubricant for consumer manipulation. So I'll ask you, who do you actually trust in the watch media now? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's talk about the brands that aren't drifting into hype. These are the ones that are essentially marketing companies wearing watch branding as a costume. MVMT or Movement is a classic case. Filippo Loretti is another. Their move is simple. Sell a cheap, generic watch, wrapped in an identity narrative so loud it drowns out the product itself. Italian design, luxury for less, designed in somewhere vaguely romantic. It's less horology, more Instagram merch with a cheap quartz heartbeat. These aren't brands built on watchmaking. They're brands built on advertising. And it works because most people aren't watch nerds. But they don't deserve punishment for that. They deserve honesty. Microbrands are not doomed, but The space is becoming a mirror of the wider attention economy, and if we want to stay vibrant, we have to stop rewarding the tactics that suffocate it. Reward transparency, reward service and originality, even when it's imperfect. And we need to stop pretending that limited automatically means special, because special isn't a number printed on a caseback. Special is the feeling you get when the object speaks to you, in a way marketing never could. Microbrands started as a rebellion, and rebellions are fragile. Over time, they can harden into institutions, and institutions are always tempted by shortcuts. The goal here isn't to sneer at small brands. It's to defend the spirit that made them exciting in the first place. The idea that watches could be personal again. So the next time a countdown clock starts screaming at you or a marketing campaign piques your interest, take a breath. The watch will either still be there tomorrow, or it wasn't for you. Buy slowly, buy honestly, and buy what speaks, not what shouts, because the watch world doesn't need more panic. It needs more taste and a little courage.